The biggest leak of U.S. military secrets ever. Website Wikileaks hit the send button on some 400,000 sensitive documents about the Iraq War. Our senior foreign affairs correspondent Martha Raddatz has been poring over the files and joins us live from Washington this morning. Good morning, Martha.
Good morning, Bianna. Yes, all of those documents are now public on the web, documents the Pentagon never wanted released.
The classified reports put the Iraqi civilian death toll higher than ever reported before, by at least 15,000. Many deaths were at the hands of the Iraqi insurgents, but the documents show U.S. responsibility for more than previously thought, including 681 civilians killed at checkpoints during the war. The military did make efforts to reduce that number later on.
And there is graphic detail about torture of detainees by the Iraqi military, with prisoners being shackled, blindfolded, kicked, and punched. 6 were apparently killed. The report says the U.S. military would sometimes turn a blind eye to the behavior, despite a statement from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs back in 2005.
It is absolutely the responsibility of every U.S. service member, if they see inhumane treatment being conducted, to intervene to stop it.
The documents also reveal that in February 2007, an Apache helicopter pilot asked what to do about 2 Iraqi men believed to have been firing mortars who were trying to surrender. Word comes back, they cannot surrender to an aircraft and are still valid targets. The helicopter then shot and killed the men. Arab-based news organizations are already playing up the reports.
Torture, claims of murder at checkpoints.
The Arab stations are reporting 285,000 dead and wounded. It is this soldier, 23-year-old former Army intelligence analyst Bradley Manning, who the Pentagon believes is the source of the leaked documents. He is now in a military detention facility in Quantico, Virginia. But legal charges may go beyond Manning. The head of Wikileaks believes the FBI may go after him.
The United States is conducting an aggressive investigation in relation to trying to get up an espionage charge against me personally.
That is not stopping Wikileaks. They now say they'll release 15,000 more documents about the war in Afghanistan. Dan?
More to come, an ongoing challenge for the Pentagon. Martha, thank you. And speaking of the Pentagon, joining us now from there is the spokesman, Geoff Morell. Geoff, good morning to you, and thank you very much for getting up to talk to us this morning.
Not a very good morning over here, Dan.
So let me ask you about that. How bad is the damage in your view?
Well, listen, I mean, this is an extraordinarily concerning release of classified information. We have been assessing this potential impact for quite some time. We believe that our primary exposure here is in the fact that our enemies will be now able to mine perhaps up to 500,000 classified documents, which could reveal how our forces operate in the field, how they respond in certain combat situations, the capabilities of our equipment, and so forth. We know in the wake of the Afghan document release in July, the Taliban and other terrorist organizations urged their members to mine that database, to look for vulnerabilities in how we operate, and then try to exploit them in the field. This now is 4 times as large, as you mentioned. It gives them that much more information to try to go after us with.
And of course, there's also the damage to America's reputation in the world. But let me ask you about something that's in the documents today. These reports of prisoner abuse are jarring. We're talking about prisoners who were beaten by Iraqi forces with rods, tortured with boiling water, acid, had fingers cut off, even raped. So what's interesting about this is that the U.S. strategy right now, as we pull out of Iraq, is to hand power over to these Iraqi forces, our allies. What does this information, this newly released information, say about the wisdom of that strategy? And didn't we go into Iraq in the first place to stop Saddam Hussein's brutality?
Well, let me remind you of the scope of these documents. It covers a period dating from 2004 to 2010. Obviously, we have seen much improvement over that span in terms of the capabilities of the Iraqi army as well as the Iraqi police departments. So clearly this is a different Iraqi military, Iraqi security forces today than there was at the beginning of this conflict, which dates back to when these documents, the period these documents first cover. I'm not going to get into the specifics of any of the documents, but I can tell you our policy with regards to detainee abuse was always, if we happened upon it, if we witnessed it, if we found evidence of it after the fact, fact, reported up the chain of command, and at the appropriate level, that was then referred to the Iraqi military for them to take action, disciplinary action, investigations, and then hopefully correct the behavior of their personnel in the field.
Yes, but these leaked documents indicate that there was apparently a policy of telling American troops not to investigate any detainee abuse unless it was carried out by Americans or our coalition partners. Is that true?
Our policy has always been, when we witness or find evidence of abuse, we are to report it up the chain of command. We're not going to have a guy at the ground level who's out in the field, conduct an investigation on the site or intervene with their intermediaries in the Iraqi army. Let's get it up to the appropriate levels. Let's talk to Iraqis who can make a difference in changing this behavior and do so. And that has always been the policy, and we believe it's always been executed.
But again, we don't execute, and we don't investigate, rather. We're Americans told, don't investigate, simply report up the chain?
Dan, we're dealing with a sovereign country who has its own military and its own ground rules and its own way of dealing with things. Our duty was to report that up the chain of command and then refer it to the appropriate person in the Iraqi military for them to take action on. That was the responsibility of our forces in the field.
Sounds like, yes, perhaps they were told not to investigate. Let me ask one last question here. The incident that Martha reported with the American troops in the helicopter who apparently fired on Iraqis who were trying to surrender. True or not? And is this a violation of your understanding of the international laws of war?
Again, Dan, I'm not familiar with all the details in all these documents. And I point out to you, these are tactical field-level reports. They are snapshots in time. They don't tell the whole story of this conflict. I don't think they provide much new information about what has happened over the course of this conflict. They provide new bits of anecdotal information. That said, as you know, it has been our driving force throughout this campaign to minimize civilian casualties. We've been executing a counterinsurgency strategy. We would run counter to that to try to not operate with the utmost care when it comes to the well-being of civilians in Iraq, for fear of turning them over to the enemy and having them be more sympathetic to al-Qaeda and so forth. So we've done our level best over the course of this conflict to minimize civilian casualties, and we think we've done a much, much better job of it over the past several years.
Geoff Morell, again, we really appreciate you getting up to talk to us this morning. Thank you.
My pleasure.